I witnessed my wife tear me apart in front of 10 guests during our anniversary celebration dinner, and I stayed completely silent. I already knew she'd been involved with her colleague for half a year. In roughly 5 minutes, her carefully built world was about to collapse in the most dramatic fashion imaginable. Let me explain how we reached that point. 3 weeks earlier, I endured what should have been the lowest evening of my marriage. Instead, it became the single most gratifying experience of my life. My wife, let's call her Maya, had spent weeks organizing this gathering, repeatedly describing how unforgettable it would be, and how everyone from her advertising agency needed to see our stunning home, while properly marking 4 years of marriage. In hindsight, I should have suspected something when she unusually insisted I take a day off work to assist with preparations, something she had never valued before, but I assumed she was finally putting in real effort. By 7 in the evening, our home resembled a page from a luxury interior magazine. Gourmet Italian catering from the upscale downtown restaurant, flawless ambience, lighting arranged for perfect photos. For perhaps 10 minutes, I genuinely thought the night might pass normally. Guests began arriving around 7:30, the usual group, 5 couples from her workplace, acquaintances whose names I barely recalled, the sort who casually mentioned their vacation properties and race times. Maya switched into performance mode the instant the first person stepped inside. That exaggerated, theatrical chuckle, the light shoulder touches during conversation, the dramatic head tilt at every comment as though it were hilarious. I fulfilled my standard role, the quiet spouse refilling glasses and keeping snacks replenished. Roughly an hour and a half later, everyone had gathered in the living area. Wine had been poured steadily, and someone made a light-hearted comment about how marriage can drain your social energy. I immediately sensed the change, the particular gleam in Maya's eyes that appears after her third glass when she craves the spotlight. I knew precisely what was coming. One of the women asked a harmless question about keeping romance alive after 4 years. Maya released a biting laugh and replied, "Oh, excitement isn't something we struggle with," her voice thick with mockery that caused an instant uncomfortable hush before forced chuckles broke it. Then she pressed on. She launched into sharp jabs about how I'm obsessively precise in every aspect of existence, how I treat closeness like putting together flat-pack furniture, following every step from the guidebook exactly, how she's considered using a timer in the kitchen just to test whether I'd even realize. You could see the room wrestling with whether to laugh or act oblivious. The men suddenly found their glasses fascinating. The women traded uneasy looks, and I remained seated on the couch arm, beer in hand, observing my wife methodically dismantle me before virtual strangers. She ramped it up further, complaining that I'm so focused on process and precision that I completely overlook the essence. How physical intimacy with me feels like observing someone replicate a video guide step by step. People began glancing at phones, searching for polite escape routes. One husband tried steering the topic toward travel plans, but Maya simply steamrolled past and declared, "He's brilliant at organizing, maps out every tiny detail." That's precisely the issue. No impulsiveness, no fire, only one chore after another. By then, pain had faded. I was captivated, watching the disaster unfold frame by frame. The peak arrived when she turned straight toward me, wearing a vicious smirk, and said, "The truly pitiful thing is he truly believes he's skilled at it, like he honestly thinks he's nailing every part. But truthfully, it's just sad." The apartment fell into absolute stillness. I didn't flinch, didn't argue, didn't utter a sound. I simply took a measured sip of beer and waited, because I understood what would follow. That was the instant when Alina, Maya's closest friend, who had observed me quietly all night with an odd, guarded look, finally spoke. Her voice sliced cleanly through the quiet. I'd noticed her staring at me throughout the evening, and now the reason was obvious. She glanced at Maya, then at me, then back at Maya and stated plainly, "That's curious, Maya, because he's actually exceptional. Truly one of the most considerate lovers I've ever known." You could have heard silence itself in that moment. Maya's expression cycled through shock, bewilderment, realization, and pure horror in seconds. Her jaw dropped. Every guest froze, struggling to absorb the scene. I watched Maya's mind short-circuit live, trying to decide if this was some cruel prank, then grasping that it absolutely wasn't. And I stayed perfectly composed because this exact second had been my goal for 6 long months. Chaos erupted. People leaped up. One wife snatched her bag in panic. Several husbands pretended sudden deafness. Maya kept stammering, what, like a stuck loop, while Elena remained seated, wearing a subtle, triumphant smile. I finally rose, placed my beer carefully on the table, surveyed the stunned faces, and spoke evenly before anyone could bolt. "I believe everyone here deserves to know precisely how this evening came to be. Because the full truth began 6 months earlier, and it's far more layered than what just occurred. In reality, I discovered Maya's infidelity 6 months prior to that gathering. Every day since, I'd acted the part of the unaware husband while quietly assembling proof that would shatter her existence. It began on an ordinary afternoon when a notification flashed on her phone from someone named Ryan. I'm not someone who snoops through devices, but the preview appeared right on her lock screen as the phone rested beside me on the sofa. It read, "Still replaying this morning. Dying to feel you again," followed by 3 flame symbols. My gut twisted instantly. Maya was in the shower. I had perhaps 20 seconds. I picked up the device, entered the code I'd seen her use countless times, and opened the conversation. In those brief moments before the water stopped, I found something nauseating. 6 full months of exchanges, hundreds of texts, intimate photos, hotel addresses with room numbers. Exact dates and times, documented like court exhibits. They'd met at minimum twice weekly, lunch hour escapes, after-work sessions when she claimed yoga classes or girls' nights. And the messages went beyond physical details. They were far crueler. She described me as dull, compared me to a machine during intimacy, mocked how I never noticed her pretending, which, she claimed, happened every single time. She ridiculed my habit of sorting the kitchen cabinets and arranging laundry, said I offered security but zero thrill. Ryan repeatedly pressed, "When will you finally ditch him?" She'd reply, "Soon, just picking the perfect window." They'd chuckle together about how clueless I remained, how simple it was to deceive me face to face. Then came the line that shifted everything. "He's lined up for that director-level role next month. Once it hits and I sort the money side, I'm gone." Suddenly, I realized this wasn't merely cheating. It was a deliberate, extended scheme to squeeze every possible advantage from me before walking away. I heard the shower stop. I closed the thread, returned the phone exactly as found. When Maya reappeared, I was casually browsing news on my own device. She grabbed hers without a glance and resumed typing, likely to him, and I sat there feeling hollowed out. That night I didn't sleep at all. Lying next to her, I mentally replayed the previous year. Every alibi, every late arrival, every time she'd turned away citing tiredness. Suddenly, every detail locked into place. Strangely, no tears came, no outburst, no immediate confrontation. Instead, I began strategizing because that promotion comment had flipped a switch. If I handled this properly, I could flip the entire balance. The following morning, I called in ill, devoted 9 hours to research, located a top-rated family lawyer, booked a consultation, and learned crucial details about my standing. Our home, the one Maya loved flaunting, was purchased solely in my name 2 years before we met, funded entirely by inheritance from my grandfather. Both cars were registered to me because her credit was poor at marriage, and I'd rebuilt it using my accounts. We shared one household checking account for bills, but everything else remained separate, and she earned noticeably less than I did annually. The attorney explained I held an exceptionally strong position. She'd have no entitlement to the property, I'd likely retain virtually everything, and concrete proof of unfaithfulness would bolster my case further. I immediately started compiling evidence, capturing screenshots whenever I could briefly access her phone, storing them securely in a private cloud folder she couldn't reach, keeping a precise record of every questionable absence. I quietly opened a separate bank account elsewhere and slowly rerouted my salary deposits there, keeping the joint account funded just enough for regular expenses so nothing seemed amiss. I gathered all critical papers, passports, certificates, policies, statements, and placed them in a safe deposit box far from home. I spoke with my manager and requested to delay the promotion that had been in discussion, citing private matters. He was puzzled but agreed. That single move completely disrupted Maya's schedule. Then, roughly 3 weeks before the anniversary event, I received a surprising message from Alina, Maya's supposed closest confidant, asking to meet privately for coffee. My initial reaction was suspicion, perhaps a setup, but the tone felt sincerely pressing. I agreed to a cafe on the far side of the city, away from her colleague's view. Alina arrived visibly anxious. She ordered a drink she never sipped, then poured out the truth. She'd learned of the affair at least 2 months earlier. Nearly everyone at their company was aware. People openly mocked it because Ryan was married, and his wife actually worked in the same office tower, just floors above. Alina revealed Maya had already met with her own attorney, intending to file right after my promotion finalized, and had even coached Ryan on timing his own exit. But Alina wasn't sharing this from loyalty. She was furious that Maya had repeatedly used her as a cover story, lying straight to her, and most shockingly, Alina herself had feelings for Ryan and was livid he'd chosen Maya. Then came the bombshell. Months earlier, during a company event while Maya was traveling, Alina and Ryan had hooked up after drinks. So she possessed direct knowledge that could wound Maya's pride deeply. Alina met my gaze and said, "I want to assist you in completely ruining her, and I know the perfect method." That's how we devised the plan for the anniversary gathering. Her idea was ruthlessly clever. At the precise moment Maya, predictably tipsy, began belittling me, as Alina knew she would, Alina would deliver a vague statement implying intimacy between us. Whether anything real had occurred was irrelevant. The mere suggestion, delivered convincingly, would trigger Maya's guilty response and expose her own secret, even if my supposed involvement with Alina was invented. Pure psychological precision. I returned home, had my attorney complete the divorce filing preparations, and waited. I observed Maya eagerly arranging the event, texting Ryan about how amusing it would be to mock me publicly, selecting her ideal outfit for the occasion. Any trace of sorrow had vanished. Only cold resolve remained, the calm certainty of holding every advantage while she believed victory was hers. So there we were again in that living room, 10 stunned faces staring as though I'd revealed something impossible. Maya's complexion ghostly pale, Alina sitting with that quiet, victorious expression. I allowed the heavy quiet to linger, letting the weight settle fully. Then calmly, I retrieved my phone and accessed the secure folder I'd built over months. Maya instantly recognized the danger. She shot up shouting, "Don't you dare do this." But the moment had passed. I was finished shielding her polished facade. I began reciting the messages aloud. Not every single one, or "we'd be there all night," but the most devastating selections. The ones labeling me worthless and dull. mocking how she'd pretended during every intimate moment across 4 years, plotting their future once they'd discarded their partners, explicitly delaying her exit until my promotion cleared for maximum financial gain. I watched every guest physically recoil. One woman gasped and clutched her husband's sleeve. Another pair rose silently and headed straight for the exit. The men wore expressions of pure dismay, suddenly aware they'd spent the evening chuckling at jokes aimed at a man whose wife had been orchestrating his downfall. Maya frantically interrupted, insisting, "That's not how it really is. You're twisting everything." But I continued reading, methodically revealing her true character. With each line, her social world crumbled before our eyes. Then I reached the section I savored most, the exchanges between Maya and Alina, where Maya griped about constantly relying on Alina for alibis, called her needy and pitiful, and admitted keeping the friendship purely for convenient cover. Alina's face, when she realized I was exposing her involvement too, was priceless. She immediately tried to retreat, stammering, "Wait, no, I was supporting you." I looked straight at her and said, "You weren't supporting me, Alina. You wanted to wound Maya because you desired Ryan for yourself. You're simply more skilled at concealing your manipulation." That was the breaking point. The final guests rushed for the door. Within moments, the room held only 3 people, me, Maya, and Alina. The quiet was suffocating except for Maya's ragged breathing and Alina's furious exhales. Maya sank onto the couch and began sobbing, not authentic grief, but the practiced, sympathy-seeking tears she used when cornered. She repeated endlessly that it was only a slip-up, that we could repair it. I walked to the entryway, reached into my jacket pocket, withdrew a thick envelope and placed it on the table before her. She stared at it like poison. "Divorce documents," I said evenly. "I'll file them at the courthouse first thing tomorrow." To eliminate any confusion, she would receive absolutely nothing. I then detailed precisely what my lawyer had confirmed. The home was mine pre-marriage, bought entirely with family inheritance. Vehicles registered solely to me. Finances largely separate beyond one shared bill-paying account. 6 months of irrefutable, time-stamped proof of infidelity, including locations. Most of my assets already quietly transferred to inaccessible accounts. She had until week's end to vacate, as this was my property and I wanted her gone. The utter defeat on her face when reality sank in, realizing she'd been completely outmaneuvered, was almost worth the preceding agony. She instantly switched to pleading, dropping to her knees, clutching my hands, insisting she loved me, that it was a horrible error, begging me not to destroy everything. But the performance was so obviously insincere it was nearly comical. I withdrew my hands and spoke the plain truth, without heat or bitterness, just clarity. "You don't love me, Maya. You never truly loved me as a person. You loved the security I supplied, this home, the comfortable routine, but never who I really am. And honestly, the anger has faded. I'm simply relieved it's ending." Something inside her broke. She flipped from begging to fury in seconds, screaming that I'd regret this, that she'd ruin me, that I'd end up lonely and broken. Alina stood awkwardly, unsure whether to flee or linger. I told her to leave immediately. She tried one last ploy, stepping close and murmuring, "You know, we could actually work well together." I meant what I said earlier. I laughed openly in her face and replied that I'd rather spend my life alone than entangle myself with someone just as calculating as my soon-to-be ex, only with better camouflage. She exploded and stormed out, slamming the door so violently a wall frame crashed and shattered. That night I slept in the spare room, door secured, while Maya wept in what had been our bedroom. Next morning I drove directly to my attorney's office and filed officially. Over the next 14 days, Maya's life unraveled spectacularly. Screenshots shown at the party had been discreetly captured by multiple phones, and spread through her workplace within 2 days. Alina, out of spite, forwarded detailed proof straight to HR. Both Maya and Ryan lost their jobs for breaching strict company conduct rules regarding workplace relationships. Ryan's wife learned through office whispers, promptly filed for divorce, and posted a scathing public account online that spread rapidly among their circles, demolishing reputations. Maya attempted to crash with friends, but no one wanted to shelter someone exposed as a chronic deceiver and schemer. Eventually, she had no option but to return to her parents' home 3 states away. The perfect final touch arrived 3 months after that infamous dinner. I was alone at home, finally at peace, warming leftover food and watching sports when the doorbell rang near 9:30 p.m. Peering through the viewer, I saw both Maya and Alina standing in the corridor, already bickering loudly. I opened the door just 4 inches, chain still latched, and asked their purpose. They both began shouting simultaneously, Maya demanding to retrieve forgotten items, Alina insisting she needed to discuss something critical. Then they turned on each other right there in the hallway, yelling accusations about who truly caused the catastrophe. Alina called Maya a selfish exploiter who earned every consequence. Maya shrieked that Alina was obsessed and had destroyed it all. It escalated to shoving. I stated clearly I'd dial the police in 30 seconds if they didn't depart. I stepped back, locked the door firmly, and listened as their argument continued down the hall toward the elevator. Eventually the doors shut and silence returned. I returned to my warmed meal, settled on the couch in the apartment that was finally solely mine, and began laughing genuinely. The entire saga so perfectly, absurdly poetic. The woman who'd spent years deliberately diminishing me, making me feel insignificant and expendable, had lost her career, her social network, her residence, and every ounce of respect, all because she couldn't resist one last public performance at my expense. Karma had simply repaid the favor, with interest. The divorce finalized uncontested. Her attorney evidently urged her to accept terms and move forward. These days I'm healthier than I've been in years. I've started therapy to process the long manipulation. I took the delayed promotion. I'm dating someone I met at a professional event, someone who values me as a person, not a resource. Occasionally at night, I reflect on that anniversary evening and how differently things might have unfolded had I confronted her privately. But I hold zero regret over the public revelation. She chose to degrade me before witnesses for amusement. The universe simply echoed her choice, multiplied. What are your thoughts on this experience? Share below.